I say the most dangerous things in life don't crash into you like a speeding car. They arrive softly. They slip in through unlocked doors wearing ordinary faces. They sound like kindness. They look like help. They feel like relief. And by the time you realize what they really are, you've already stepped over a line you can't pretend you didn't see. I never thought my story would sound like this. If you saw me now, you'd just see a woman at a window, hair pulled back, mug of cold coffee in her hand, 2 years older than she looks on paper, 2 decades older inside, the kind of tired you can't fix with sleep. I replay one night over and over, tracing it back to where it started, and every time I land on the same small moment, not a kiss, not a confession, not a fight, just a simple offer. Do you want me to help with your back? That's all it was. Or that's what I told myself. He'd strained a muscle playing soccer. Nothing serious, no ambulance, no dramatic fall, just a twist, a pull, a dull ache that settled between his shoulder blades and refused to let go. His name isn't really important, but I'll call him Noah. Noah was 19 by then. Legally an adult, taller than me by a mile, strong in that easy, effortless way boys become men without warning. To most people, he was just a lanky college kid staying with us while he finished his first year at the university nearby. To me, he was more complicated than that. I'd known him since he was 11. His mom was my friend for a little while, before life swept her out of town and out of touch. When she left for work in another country, Noah needed a place to stay during the school year. My husband offered our home. It's just until he's settled, he said. He'll be like family, so that's what I made him. Family, I helped him with homework. I packed his school lunches when he forgot. I sat in the front row of his middle school play when no one else could come. Somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking of him as the kid staying with us and started thinking of him as someone I was responsible for. He grew up in our house, he grew up in front of my eyes, and I never once imagined he'd be part of the story that broke the version of myself I thought I knew. That day, he walked in from practice with a limp. His face was tight, trying to pretend it didn't hurt as much as it did. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, then winced sitting down, "just pulled something. It's stupid." I told him to rest, asked if he wanted tea, the usual automatic caretaking things. A couple of hours later, I found him stretched out on the couch, trying to balance a warm pack against his back. His t-shirt was bunched up, his jaw clenched. "It's not helping?" I asked. "Not really," he muttered. "Feels like it's stuck. Right here." He pressed his fingers into a knot between his shoulder blades. I stood there in the doorway longer than I needed to. I could have told him to take painkillers. I could have said, "Go see a physiotherapist." I could have said, "You'll be fine, you're young." Instead, I heard myself say, "I can try to loosen it if you want. I used to help your uncle with his back when it locked up." He looked over his shoulder at me. I can still see that look. Not playful, not flirty, just tired, open, grateful. "You do that?" he asked. "Of course," I said, as if there could be any other answer, because that's what you do when you care about someone, right? You help, you comfort, you show up. What I didn't admit, not to myself, not at first, was how long it had been since anyone had touched me gently, how long it had been since anyone looked at me like I mattered. I've been married for 12 years. On paper, that sounds solid, stable, mature. In photographs, it looks that way too. The nice house, the matching rings, the travel pictures, the holiday dinners. But silence can live in beautiful places. It didn't arrive all at once. It came in small subtractions. First, my husband stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings. Then he stopped asking how my day went. Then, quietly, almost politely, he stopped seeing me at all. He was always on a call, always behind on emails, always exhausted. There was always one more meeting, one more deadline, one more reason to keep his attention somewhere else. I sat across from him at dinner, watched him scroll through his phone, listen half-heartedly, nod while thinking about something else. I told myself it was normal, that this is just what happens as years pass, that love settles, that passion cools, that wanting anything more is greedy. So I became efficient instead of loved, useful instead of cherished. I ran the house like a quiet engine, meals on the table, laundry folded, bills paid, grocery list memorized. I smiled when I was supposed to. I laughed at jokes I'd heard 100 times, and little by little I disappeared. The only person who seemed to notice my fading was the boy who wasn't really my child, but felt like he might as well have been. No one noticed when I changed my hair. He noticed when I wore a new dress. He noticed the night I stood at the sink with my back turned, shoulders shaking silently while I washed dishes I'd already rinsed twice. He didn't say anything then. He just walked past me, lingered for a second, and opened the fridge like nothing happened. But I saw his reflection hesitate in the glass. I saw him see me, and when you've felt invisible for long enough, being seen feels like air. That first massage started simple. He lay on his stomach with a folded towel under his chest. His t-shirt rucked up enough to show the top of his back. I sat beside him, lotion bottle in hand, hands a little awkward at first. "Tell me if it hurts," I said quietly. He made a joke about suffering silently and then sucked in a breath when my thumbs pressed into the knot. Right there, he hissed through his teeth. Wow, okay, that's it. I kept my movements slow and careful. I'd done this dozens of times for my husband in the early years, before we stopped touching for anything other than practical reasons. At first, it was nothing more than what it was supposed to be, a simple act of care, a way to ease someone's pain. The television murmured in the background. The house was calm. My husband was upstairs in his office, voice rising and falling through the closed door as he talked to someone on a screen. Then, as I shifted my hands, his shirt slid up a little more. My fingertips brushed bare skin at the small of his back. Warm, solid, alive. It shouldn't have meant anything. It was an accident. A second. But something inside me reacted. Not in a loud, dramatic way, more like the click of a small switch you didn't know existed. I paused. Too much pressure? I asked, my voice thinner than I wanted it to be. No, he said, softer now. It's nice. He exhaled, the tension slowly draining from his shoulders. For a moment it felt strangely peaceful, a boy in pain, a woman offering help, nothing more. Then he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. I wish someone took care of you the way you take care of everyone else. My hand stopped moving. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. I stared at the back of his head, at the familiar mess of hair, the curve of his neck. He didn't turn around. He didn't take it back. I could have laughed it off. I could have said, don't be silly. I could have pretended it was nothing. Instead, I said nothing at all. The silence between us changed shape. The room felt smaller, the air felt thicker. A part of me wanted to get up and walk away. Another part wanted to lie down on the floor and cry from the shock of being acknowledged so sharply. You don't realize how empty you are until someone drops a single pebble into the, well. After that, nothing looked different on the surface. We didn't talk about what. He said, life kept moving in its usual pattern. My husband buried in work. The house humming along. Noah going to class, coming back with muddy shoes and stories about professors he didn't like, but little cracks had opened. Cracks I pretended not to see. He started spending more time in the kitchen while I cooked, sitting on the counter, stealing slices of vegetables, asking real questions. How was your day, really? Did you ever want to do something else with your life? Do you ever feel like you've outgrown your own house? They were innocent questions, on the surface, the kind you might hear in any conversation. But he listened to my answers in a way I hadn't experienced in years. He didn't check his phone. He didn't interrupt. He watched my face like my thoughts were worth the time it took to hear them. One evening, he walked in holding a small potted plant. It was nothing fancy, a simple green thing in a cheap ceramic pot. I saw this at the corner shop, he said, a little shy, setting it down by the window. Thought the kitchen could use something that's actually alive. I felt the words more than I heard them. No one had bought me anything just because in so long I couldn't remember the last time. Birthdays were obligatory, gifts ordered online, wrapped in glossy paper, opened between emails. Anniversaries came and went. One year, my husband forgot entirely and laughed it off. This small, slightly crooked plant felt heavier than any bouquet. Thank you, I told him. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. It's beautiful. He shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. You do a lot for everyone, he said. Figured something should do something for you. The comment lodged in my chest like a tiny, glowing stone. After dinner, my husband went to bed early, muttering about an early flight. Noah stayed behind to help with the dishes. We moved side by side, passing plates, wiping counters, the kind of quiet, easy routine that feels like a dance you've practiced 1,000 times. I like it when it's just us, he said casually, handing me a glass, not suggestive, not smirking, just honest. Something in my stomach flipped. I dried my hands more forcefully than necessary and forced a laugh. Less noise, I replied, easier to clean up. But we both knew he hadn't been talking about the dishes. That was the thing about what grew between us. It didn't start with lust. It started with attention, with care, with two people who had been hungry for so long they didn't realize how empty they were until they started tasting something warm again. He wasn't a boy, not anymore. But he wasn't the man I promised my life to either. He was in this uncomfortable, in between, old enough to understand what was happening, young enough to feel everything, intensely. I told myself I was overreacting, that I was reading too much into little things, that I was simply grateful for kindness, that my loneliness was distorting normal moments into something they weren't. But loneliness is a quiet liar. It whispers explanations that feel like comfort. It tells you stories where you are the victim of neglect, not a participant in your own slow undoing. The massages became a routine, not every night, not even every week, but often enough he would wander into the living room after a long day, roll his shoulders, and say something like, "That spot is killing me again," with a half grin that felt like a question. I could have told him to buy a foam roller. I could have said, "Ask a professional." Instead, I worried about him. I told myself I was helping. I told myself no one else would bother. Late evenings, the house quiet, the television low, the light from the floor lamp soft and forgiving. He'd lie face down. I'd sit beside him. My hands would find the places that hurt. At first, it was purely practical. Tight muscles, short exhale of relief, gentle pressure, small jokes, then the pauses between my movements lengthened. My fingers memorized the lines of his shoulders. I found myself tracing instead of pressing, soothing instead of simply fixing. I stopped looking at his face while I worked. Eye contact felt dangerous, not because he did anything wrong, but because when our eyes met, something inside me stirred like a bird that had forgotten it had wings. One night, I finished and rested my hand on his arm for a second before standing up. Just a brief, human, reassuring touch. He covered my hand with his... He didn't squeeze, he didn't pull, he just held it there, his palm warm over my fingers. The TV murmured some nonsense about a show we weren't watching. The hallway clock ticked over another minute of my life I would never get back. "Do you ever wish your life looked different?" he asked, still staring ahead. My throat tightened. I should have laughed. I should have said something light. I should have stepped away, used the excuse of dishes, laundry, anything. Instead, I answered honestly. "Sometimes," I said. Yes, he turned his head slightly, just enough so I could see the edge of his expression. "Like, with someone who actually sees you?" he asked carefully. That word again, sees, it hit harder than any romantic line could have, because that's what I'd been starving for without admitting it. To be seen, to be known, to be more than a useful shadow in my own house. I didn't answer that question. I pulled my hand back. I made some excuse about needing to check on something in the kitchen. I walked away from the couch, from him, from those words. My legs were steady. My heart wasn't. The night that changed everything came a few weeks later. It was raining, the kind of full-bodied storm that makes the world outside feel far away. Street lights blurred into streaks on the window. The roof hummed with constant rain. The house, usually echoing with my husband's typing or phone calls, was strangely fully quiet. He was on a work trip in another city, 3 days, maybe 4. He'd kissed my cheek at the door, eyes already on his suitcase. No real goodbye, just a promise to call if I get the chance. He didn't. I spent the first evening reading in bed, the book open, but my mind somewhere else entirely. I heard the front door open and close. Noah's footsteps on the stairs slowed halfway up. "You awake?" he called. "Yeah," I answered. He stepped into the doorway, hoodie damp from the rain, hair dripping in messy lines across his forehead. He moved like everything hurt. "It's my back again," he said with a crooked half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Feels like it's wrapped in knots. I tried stretching, took a hot shower. Nothing's working." I sat up, the book forgotten, my pulse picking up for reasons I didn't want to examine. "I can get you some painkillers," I offered. "I already took some," he said. "They're not doing much." He shifted weight from one leg to the other, then touched his lower back with a wince. "It's all down here now," he said quietly. "Lower. I can't get comfortable. I don't think I'll sleep like this." That should have been my cue to stop, to say, "You'll be fine. You're young." To tell him to book a physio appointment in the morning, to close the door and protect us both. Instead, I looked at him, really looked. I saw the strain in his shoulders, the lines of exhaustion around his mouth, the uncertainty in his eyes, as if he was asking something and trying not to ask it too loudly. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Just for a little while, come downstairs. It's warmer there." We went to the living room. I grabbed the lotion without, thinking it had become part of the scenery now, sitting on the side table like it had always been there. He took off his hoodie then, and his shirt, more practical than provocative, but the sight of his bare back made something inside me tremble. I sat at my usual place. The lamp cast soft light over his skin. My hands hovered for a second before they landed. It was like touching a line of electricity. I focused on the movement, the muscle, the way his spine curved, the sound of the rain outside. Anything but the fact that this was the most intimate contact I'd had with anyone in months. His breathing slowed, deepened. He relaxed under my hands in a way I don't think he relaxed for anyone else. We didn't speak. At least not with words. At some point, I shifted my weight, my knee pressing closer against the couch. My fingertips skimmed the sensitive spot at the base of his spine. His breath hitched, then his hand reached back and covered mine. This time, there was no joke. No casual comment, no easy exit. I froze. My skin burned where he touched me. Every warning bell went off inside my head. Pull away. My mind screamed. Stand up. Say no. Stop. But another voice, quieter, heavier, whispered something else. Stay. We stayed in that suspended half moment, neither of us moving, both of us hearing everything the other wasn't saying. He turned slowly onto his side, my hand still trapped under his. When he faced me, we were closer than we had ever been. His eyes were bare. No shield, no mask, no playful buffer. "Why do we have to pretend?" he asked. He didn't sound seductive. He sounded wounded, tired, confused. The way I felt inside, my heart was pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. Because it's wrong, I whispered. He nodded, just once, but he didn't move away. Is it wrong to want to be seen, he asked. Is it wrong to care? His fingertips lifted, brushed along my cheek lightly, the back of his hand skimming my skin. A small, tentative touch. The kind of touch that asks permission without saying the word. I closed my eyes, not because I wanted him to keep going, not because I wanted more, but because I didn't know who I was in that moment, and it scared me. We hovered there at the edge of something we would never be able to roll back if we crossed it. The rain hammered the windows. The world outside blurred into noise. The line between us didn't blur that night. It vanished. We didn't take our clothes off. We didn't do what people assume when they hear a story like this. But emotionally, internally, the boundary I'd built in my mind crumbled for a handful of heartbeats. I let myself feel all the things I'd shoved down, wanted, chosen, important, alive. Then, like someone snapped a rubber band, I pulled my hand away. I can't, I said, the words harsh and breathless. Noah, I can't. I stood up too fast. The room spun for a second. My legs carried me to the hallway before my brain caught up. I went upstairs, closed my bedroom door, sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my hands like they belonged to someone else. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there listening to the storm and the soft sounds of a house that suddenly felt unfamiliar. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face in that lamplight. I heard his question, why do we have to pretend? Because I'm married, because I helped raise you, because I am supposed to know better, because I thought I did. The next morning, I couldn't look at myself properly in the mirror. My reflection felt like an accusation. My eyes were swollen, not just from lack of sleep, but from something deeper. Disappointment in the person staring back. I told myself we hadn't actually done anything, that nothing happened. It was a lie. Something had happened. We crossed a line inside ourselves. We admitted something without saying it out loud. And once you do that, you can't unknow it. I spent the next few days avoiding him. I stayed in my room longer. I found errands to run. I washed dishes that weren't dirty. I folded already folded towels. I moved through the house like a ghost, trying not to bump into anything. Every time I heard his footsteps, my chest tightened. When our paths crossed, I kept my eyes on tasks. The stove, the laundry basket, my phone, anything that wasn't his face. He noticed. Of course he did. One afternoon, I came into my bedroom and saw something on my nightstand, a sheet of notebook paper folded carefully. No name, no envelope. My stomach dropped. I knew it was from him before I touched it. I stood there for a long time just staring at it. I could have left it unopened. I could have thrown it away without reading it. But of course I didn't. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. There were only a few lines, written in slanted handwriting I could recognize anywhere. I'm sorry if I crossed a line. I never wanted to make things harder for you, but I meant what I said. You deserve more than the way you're being treated. Please don't hate me for seeing it. I read it once, twice, a third time. The words blurred. I should have ripped the paper in half. I should have flushed it down the toilet. I should have burned it over the sink. Instead, I folded it back along the same creases and slid it into the drawer with my old scarves. The ones I rarely wore anymore, the ones that smelled faintly of a woman I didn't feel like I was allowed to be. Closing that drawer felt like hiding contraband, but I knew what I was really hiding was my own desire to keep the feeling his words gave me. My husband noticed something was off, but not in the way I wished he would. You've been quiet lately, he said one evening without looking up from his laptop. You okay? I'm fine, I lied. He nodded like that was all the information he needed. You should book yourself a massage or something, he said. You look tense. Then he went back to his screen. He had no idea that the word massage now made my heart stutter in my chest. I wish I could tell you I pulled away decisively, that I drew a hard line, that I sat Noah down, told him clearly this could never happen, and backed it up with action. I didn't. I drifted instead. Some days I'd keep my distance. Others, I'd find myself in the kitchen at the same time as him, laughing at a joke, feeling the familiar pull of his attention. He didn't push. He didn't try to kiss me. He didn't corner me or declare anything grand. He just kept being kind, kept listening, kept noticing when I was tired or when my shoulders slumped. One day he handed me a mug of tea without a word, as if he'd read my mind. Another day he took out the trash before I could ask. He helped with groceries, fixed a leaky tap, sat with me when everyone else was too busy. We floated in that gray area where nothing technically wrong was happening, but everything inside me knew we were lingering too close to a threshold. I asked myself over and over, am I leading him on? Or am I just accepting basic human kindness and my starved heart is turning it into something it isn't? If you've ever been lonely inside a relationship, you know how complicated the answers can feel. The truth is, I knew exactly what I was doing every time I stayed in the room a little longer, every time I held his gaze a second too much, every time I chose to wear the blouse that made me feel like more than a housekeeper. I told myself I was only trying to remember who I used to be, A woman, not just a wife. A person, not just a function. But beneath that, something more dangerous was stirring. At some point, Noah started making plans to move into a dorm closer to campus. It was mentioned casually at first, like a practical step. I should probably live closer next semester, he said one afternoon. It's a long commute. I nodded, staring at the chopping board. Yeah, I said, that makes sense. You'll make more friends that way. The knife clicked against the wood. My chest felt hollow as soon as the words left my mouth. The idea of him leaving made me feel two opposite things at once, relief and panic. Relief because distance would make it easier to stop whatever we were doing. Panic because distance would take away the only person who seemed to see me. I hated that about myself. I hated that the thought of losing his presence hurt more than the thought of losing the version of myself I used to be proud of. One night, after lying awake for too long staring at the ceiling, I realized something awful and simple. I was waiting for something external to stop this, for him to leave, for my husband to suddenly wake up and pay attention, for some dramatic event to make the choice for me. I was avoiding the reality that the only person who could draw the line was me. The next day, when the house was empty and the afternoon light made everything look softer than it was, I asked Noah to sit down at the kitchen table. He looked nervous. So did I. We need to talk, I said, and the cliché of that sentence almost made me laugh. He sat across from me, hands folded, his expression a mix of worry and hope. I read your note, I began. Color rose in his cheeks. I figured, he said quietly. I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have. No, I interrupted gently. You don't have to apologize for caring or for seeing something that is real. I appreciate your honesty more than you know.